It was July 15th, 1976, in the small farming town of Chowchilla, California. Life here was simple. Families worked the fields, children spent their summers outside, and neighbors trusted one another. Nothing truly dangerous ever seemed to touch this quiet community. That afternoon, a yellow school bus carrying 26 children aged 5 to 14 and their 55-year-old driver, Ed Ray, set off from Dairyland Elementary after a summer trip. The kids were laughing, tired but happy, their voices carrying to countryside as the bus rumbled down the dusty road. But they never made it home. When parents realized hours later that their children hadn't returned, panic surged through Chowchilla. Calls flooded the sheriff's office. Volunteers formed search parties. By nightfall, the entire community was on high alert. The horrifying truth soon sank in. The children hadn't just been delayed. They had vanished. At first, investigators assumed the bus had suffered mechanical trouble or slid off a back road. But as the night wore on, hope dimmed. By dawn, the missing bus was found, abandoned in a dry riverbed. Inside, the seats were empty. The kids and the driver were gone. Even more chilling, there were no signs of a struggle. It was as if they had simply evaporated. Then came a revelation that confirmed everyone's worst fears. This was no accident. A series of anonymous ransom calls began. The demand? $5 million. This wasn't tragedy or chance. It was a meticulously planned kidnapping. The FBI descended on Chowchilla, turning the small town into the center of one of the largest manhunts in California history. Agents interviewed witnesses, combed roads, and studied the bus for clues. Soon, they uncovered a lead. A van had been seen trailing the school bus. That detail cracked the case wide open. Meanwhile, underground, literally, the missing children and their driver were living a nightmare. They had been herded into vans at gunpoint, driven for hours, and finally forced into a buried moving van inside a rock quarry. The van had been converted into an underground prison, stocked with food, water, mattresses, and fans. The kidnappers' plan was to bury the children alive until a ransom was paid. But what they didn't expect was the resilience of those kids. After 16 terrifying hours trapped underground, Ed Ray and several older children worked together to stack mattresses and dig their way out. One by one, they crawled through a narrow opening and finally escaped to freedom. When investigators questioned the children, the shocking truth about the kidnappers emerged. The masterminds were not hardened criminals or desperate drifters. They were 3 young men from wealthy, respected families, Frederick Woods and brothers Richard and James Schoenfeld. They came from privilege, but their greed drove them to madness. Their plan was simple: abduct the children, demand millions in state, and walk away rich. What's more chilling is how much effort they put into their crime. They had dug out and prepared the quarry bunker weeks in advance. They had calculated food and water supplies. They had even rehearsed their escape. But their arrogance was their downfall. They underestimated the courage of Ed Ray and those children, and overestimated their ability to keep such a massive crime secret. All 3 kidnappers were captured and sentenced to life in prison, though they were eventually granted parole decades later. The scars they left on Chowchilla never healed. Parents lived for years with nightmares of losing their children. Survivors grew up battling trauma and fear, and the community had to face an unshakable truth. The threat hadn't come from strangers. It came from men who lived among them, men who had been trusted, men who believed their wealth gave them power over innocent lives. The vanishing school bus of Chowchilla remains one of the most shocking crimes in U.S. history, not just because of the ransom or the audacity of the plan, but because of the lasting scar it left behind. For Chowchilla, July 15th will always be the day innocence was stolen. And for the rest of us, it is a chilling reminder. Sometimes, the real monsters aren't in the shadows. They're right beside us, hiding in plain sight. Do not forget to click the subscribe button for more.